Starting at page 164, Perfumer. His name is Claude Levitte, but everyone calls him Big Claude. For a decade, he has run a parfumerie on the Rue Vauboral, a straggling business that prospers only when the cod are being salted and the stones of the town itself begin to stink. But new opportunities have arrived, and Big Claude is not one to miss an opportunity. He is paying farmers near Cancale to butcher lambs and rabbits. Claude buckles the meat into his wife's matching vinyl suitcases and carries them himself by train to Paris. It's easy. Some weeks he can make as much as 500 francs. Supply and demand. There's always paperwork, of course. Some official up the chain catches a whiff and wants a percentage. It takes a mind like Claude's to navigate the complexities of the business. Today he is overheating. Sweat trickles down his back and sides. Saint-Malo roasts. October is here, and bright, cold winds ought to pour off the ocean. Leaves ought to tumble down the alleys. But the wind has come and gone, as if deciding it did not like the changes here. All afternoon, Claude hunkers inside his shop above the hundreds of little bottles of florals and orientals and fougères in his vitrine. Pinks and carmines and baby blues, and no one enters. An oscillating electric fan blows across his face, to the left, then to the right, and he does not read or move at all except to periodically reach a hand beneath his stool and grab a handful of biscuits from a round tin and stuff them into his mouth. Around 4 p.m., a small company of German soldiers strolls up the Rue Vauboral. They are lean, salmon-faced, and earnest. They have serious eyes. They carry their weapons barrel down, slinging them over their shoulders like clarinets. They laugh to one another and seem touched underneath their helmets with a beneficent gold. Claude understands that he ought to resent them, but he admires their competence and manners, the clean efficiency with which they move. They always seem to be going somewhere and never doubt that it is the right place to be going. Something his own country has lacked. The soldiers turn down the Rue Saint-Philippe and are gone. Claude's fingers trace ovals across the top of his vitrine. Upstairs, his wife runs a vacuum cleaner. He can hear it coursing round and round. He is nearly asleep when he sees the Parisian, who's been living 3 doors down, exit the house of Etienne Leblanc. A thin, beak-nosed man who skulks outside the telegraph office, whittling little wooden boxes. The Parisian walks in the same direction as the German soldiers, placing the heel of one foot against the toe of the other. He reaches the end of the street, scribbles something on a pad, turns 180 degrees, and walks back. When he reaches the end of the block, he stares up at the Ribault's house and makes several more notes, glancing up, glancing down, measuring, biting the eraser of his pencil as though uneasy. Big Claude goes to the window. This, too, could be an opportunity. Occupation authorities will want to know that a stranger is pacing off distances and making drawings of houses. They will want to know what he looks like, who is sponsoring this activity, who has sanctioned it. This is good. This is excellent. Time of the ostriches. Ostriches. Still they do not return to Paris. Still she does not go outside. Marie-La counts every day she has been shut up in Etienne's house. 120. 121. She thinks of the transmitter in the attic, how it sent her grandfather's voice flying over the sea. Consider a single piece glowing in your family stove. sailing like Darwin from Plymouth Sound to Cape Verde, to Patagonia, to the Falkland Islands, over waves, across borders. Once you're done with the model, she asked her father, does that mean I can go out? His sandpaper does not stop. The story Madame Manec's visitors bring into the kitchen are terrifying and difficult to believe. Parisian cousins nobody has heard from in decades now write letters begging for capons, hams, hens. The dentist is selling wine through the mail. The perfumer is slaughtering lambs and carrying them in suitcases on the train to Paris, where he sells the meat for an enormous profit. In Saint-Malo, people are fined for locking their doors, for keeping doves, for hoarding meat. Truffles disappear. Sparkling wine disappears. No eye contact. No chatter in doorways. No sunbathing. No singing. No lovers strolling the ramparts in the evenings. Such rules are not written down, but they may as well be. Icy winds whirl in from the Atlantic, and Etienne barricades himself inside his brother's old room. And Marie-Laure endures the slow rain of hours by running her fingers over his seashells down in his study, ordering them by size, by species, by morphography, checking and rechecking their order, trying to make sure she has not missorted a single one. Surely she could go out for half an hour on the arm of her father, and yet each time her father refuses. A voice echoes up from a chamber of her memory. They'll probably take the blind girls before they take the gimps. Make them do things. Outside the city walls, a few military boats cruise to and fro, and the flax is bundled and shipped and woven into rope or cables or parachute cord, and airborne gulls drop oysters or mussels or clams, and the sudden clatter on the roof makes Marie-Laure bolt upright in bed. The mayor announces a new tax, and some of Madame Manec's friends mutter that he has sold them out, that they need an homme à poigne. But others ask, what is the mayor supposed to do? It becomes known as the time of the ostriches. Ostriches? Do we have our heads in the sand, madame, or do they? Maybe everybody does, she murmurs. Madame Manec has taken to falling asleep at the table beside Marie-Laure. It takes her a long time to carry meals the 5 flights to Etienne's room, wheezing the whole way. Most mornings, Madame is baking before anyone's awake. At mid-morning, she goes out into the city, cigarette in her mouth, to bring cakes or pots of stew to the sick or the stranded. And upstairs, Marie-Laure's father works on the model, sanding, nailing, cutting, measuring, each day working more frenetically than the last, as if against some deadline known only to him. Weakest. The warrant officer in charge of field exercises is the commandant, an overzealous schoolmaster named Bastien, with an expansive walk and a round belly and a coat quivering with war medals. His face is scarred from smallpox, and his shoulders look as though they've been hewn from soft clay. He wears hobnailed jackboots every second of the day, and the cadets joke that he kicked his way out of the womb with them. Bastien demands that they memorize maps, study the angle of the sun, cut their own belts from cowhide. Every afternoon, whatever the weather, he stands in a field, bawling state-sown dicta. Prosperity depends on ferocity. The only thing that keep your precious grandmothers in their tea and cookies are the fists at the end of your arms. An antique pistol dangles from his belt. The most eager cadets look up at him with shining eyes. To Werner, he looks capable of severe and chronic violence. The corpse is a body, he explains, twirling a length of rubber hose so that its tip whirs inches from a boy's nose. No different from a man's body. Just as we ask you to each drive the weakness from your own bodies, so you must also learn to drive the weakness from the corpse. One October afternoon, Bastien plucks a pigeon-toed boy from the line. You'll be first. Who are you? Bakker, sir. Bakker. Tell us, Bakker. Who is the weakest member of this group? Werner quails. He's smaller than every cadet in his year. He tries to expand his chest, stand as tall as he can. Bakker's gaze rakes across the rows. Him, sir. Werner exhales. Bakker has chosen a boy far to Werner's right, one of the few boys with black hair. Ernst, somebody. A safe enough choice. Ernst is in fact a slow runner, a boy who has yet to grow into his horsey legs. Bastien calls Ernst forward. The boy's bottom lip trembles as he turns to face the group. Getting all weepy won't help, says Bastien, and gestures vaguely to the end of the field, where a line of trees cuts across the weeds. You have a 10-second head start. Make it to me before they make it to you. Got it? Ernst neither nods nor shakes his head. Bastien feigns frustration. When I raise my left hand, you run. When I raise my right hand, the rest of you fools run. Off Bastien waddles, rubber hose around his neck, pistol swinging at his side. 60 boys wait, breathing. Werner thinks of Jutta and her opalescent hair and quick eyes and blunt manners. She would never be mistaken for the weakest. Ernst, somebody, is shaking everywhere now, all the way down to his wrists and ankles. When Bastien is maybe 200 yards away, he turns and raises his left hand. Ernst runs with his arms nearly straight and his legs wide and unhinged. Bastien counts down from 10. 3, yells his faraway voice. 2, 1. At 0, his right arm goes up and the group unleashes. The dark-haired boy is at least 50 yards in front of them, but immediately the pack begins to gain. Hurrying, scampering, running hard, 59 14-year-olds chase one. Werner keeps to the center of the group as it strings out, his heart beating in dark confusion, wondering where Frederick is, why they're chasing this boy, and what they're supposed to do if they catch him. Except in some atavistic part of his brain, he knows exactly what they'll do. Except in some atavistic part of his brain, he knows exactly what they'll do. A few outrunners are exceptionally fast. They gain on the lone figure. Ernst's limbs pump furiously, but he clearly is not accustomed to sprinting, and he loses steam. The grass waves, the trees are transected by sunlight, the pack draws closer, and Werner feels annoyed. Why couldn't Ernst be faster? Why hasn't he practiced? How did he make it through the entrance exams? The fastest cadet is lunging for the back of the boy's shirt. He almost has him. Black-haired Ernst is going to get caught, and Werner wonders if some part of him wants it to happen. But the boy makes it to the commandant a split second before the others come pounding past. Mandatory surrender. Mahila has to badger her father 3 times before he'll read the notice aloud. Members of the population must relinquish all radio receivers now in their possession. Radio sets are to be delivered to 27 Rue de Chartres before tomorrow noon. Anyone failing to carry out this order will be arrested as a saboteur. No one says anything for a moment, and inside Mahila, an old anxiety lumbers to its feet. Is he... In your grandfather's old room, says Madame Manek. Tomorrow noon. Half the house thinks Mahila is taken up by Half the house thinks Mahila is taken up by wireless receivers and the parts that go into them. Madame Manek raps on the door to Henry's room and receives no reply. In the afternoon, they box up the equipment in Etienne's study. Madame and Papa unplugging radios and lowering them into crates. Marie-Laure, sitting on the Davenport, listening to the sets go off one by one. The old Radiola 5, a GMR Titan, a GMR Orphée, a Delco 32-volt farm radio that Etienne had shipped all the way from the United States in 1922. Her father wraps the largest in cardboard and uses an ancient wheeled dolly to thump it down the stairs. Marie-Laure sits with her fingers going numb in her lap and thinks of the machine in the attic, its cables and switches. A transmitter built to talk to ghosts. Does it qualify as a radio receiver? Should she mention it? Do Papa and Madame Manec know? They seem not to. In the evening, fog moves into the city, trailing a cold, fishy smell, and they eat potatoes and carrots in the kitchen, and Madame Manec leaves a dish outside Henri's door and taps, but the door does not open and the food remains untouched. What, asks Marie-Laure, will they do with the radios? Send them to Germany, says Papa, or pitch them in the sea, says Madame Manec. Come, child, drink your tea. It's not the end of the world. I'll put an extra blanket on your bed tonight. In the morning, Etienne remains shut inside his brother's room. If he knows what is happening in his house, Marie-Laure cannot tell. At 10 a.m., her father starts wheeling loads to the Rue de Chartres. 1 trip, 2 trips, 3. And when he comes back and loads the dolly with the last radio, Etienne still has not appeared. Marie-Laure holds Madame Manec's hand as she listens to the gate clang shut, to the cart's axle bounce as her father pushes it down the Rue Vauboral, and to the silence that reinstalls itself after he's gone. Museum. Sergeant Major Reinhold von Rumpel wakes early. He upholsters himself in his uniform, pockets his loupe and tweezers, rolls up his white gloves. By 6 a.m., he's in the hotel lobby in full dress, polish on his shoes, pistol case snapped shut. The hotel keeper brings him bread and cheese in a basket made from dark wicker, covered nicely with a cotton napkin. Everything's shipshape. There's great pleasure in being out in the city before the sun is up, streetlights glowing, the hum of a Parisian day commencing. As he walks up the Rue Cuvier and turns into the Jardin des Plantes, the trees look misty and significant, parasols held up just for him. He likes being early. At the entrance to the Grand Gallery, 2 night warders stiffen. They glance at the stripes on his collar, patch, and sleeves. The cords in their throats tighten. A small man in black flannel comes down the staircase, apologizing in German. He says he is the assistant director. He did not expect the sergeant major for another hour. We can speak French, says von Rumpel. Behind him scurries a second man with eggshell skin and an evident terror of eye contact. We would be honored to show you the collection, Sergeant Major, breathes the assistant director. This is the mineralogist, Professor Hublin. Hublin blinks twice, gives the impression of a penned animal. The pair of warders watch from the far end of the corridor. May I take your basket? It's no trouble. The gallery of mineralogy is so long. Von Rumpel can hardly see to the end of it. In sections, display case after display case sits vacant. Little shapes on their felted shelves marking the silhouettes of whatever has been removed. Von Rumpel strolls with his basket on his arm, forgetting to do anything but look. What treasures they left behind. A gorgeous set of yellow topaz crystals on a gray matrix. A great pink hunk of beryl like a crystallized brain. A violet column of tourmaline from Madagascar that looks so rich he cannot resist the urge to stroke it. Bornernite, apatite on muscovite, apatite on muscovite, natural zircon in a spray of colors, dozens more minerals he cannot name. These men, he thinks, probably handle more gemstones in a week than he's seen in his lifetime. Each piece is registered in huge organizational folios that have taken centuries to amass. The pallid Hublin shows him pages. Louis XIII began the collection as a cabinet of medicine, jade for kidneys, clay for the stomach, and so on. There were already 200,000 entries in the catalog by 1850, a priceless mineral heritage. Every now and then, Von Rumpel pulls his notebook from his pocket and makes a notation. He takes his time. When they reach the end, the assistant director laces his fingers across his belt. "We hope you are impressed, Sergeant Major. You enjoyed your tour?" "Very much." The electric lights in the ceiling are far apart, and the silence in the huge space is oppressive. "But," he says, enunciating very slowly, "what about the collections that are not on public display?" The assistant director and the mineralogist exchange a glance. "You've seen everything we can show you, Sergeant Major." Von Rumpel keeps his voice polite, civilized. Paris is not Poland, after all. Waves must be made carefully. Things cannot simply be seized. What did his father used to say? "See obstacles as opportunities, Reinhold. See obstacles as inspirations." "Is there somewhere," he says, "we can talk?" The assistant director's office occupies a dusty third-floor corner that overlooks the gardens. Walnut-paneled, overheated, decorated with pinned butterflies and beetles in alternating frames. On the wall behind his half-ton desk hangs the only image, a charcoal portrait of the French biologist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. The assistant director sits behind the desk, and Von Rumpel sits in front with his basket between his feet. The mineralogist stands. A long-necked secretary brings tea. Hublin says, "We are always acquiring, yes, all across the world, industrialization endangers mineral deposits. We collect as many types of minerals as it exists. To a curator, none is superior to any other." Von Rumpel laughs. He appreciates that they are trying to play the game, but they don't understand that the winner has already been determined. He sets down his cup of tea and says, "I would like to see your most protected specimens. I am most specifically interested in a specimen I believe you have only recently brought out from your vaults." The assistant director sweeps his left hand through his hair and releases a blizzard of dandruff. "Sergeant Major, the minerals you've seen have aided discoveries in electrochemistry and the fundamental laws of mathematical crystallography. The role of a national museum is to operate above the whims and fashions of collectors, to safeguard for future generations the..." Von Rumpel smiles. "I will wait." "You misunderstand us, monsieur. You've seen everything we can show you." "I will wait to see what you cannot show me." The assistant director peers into his tea. The mineralogist shifts from foot to foot. He appears to be wrestling with an interior fury. "I am quite gifted at waiting," Von Rumpel says in French. "It is my one great skill. I was never much good at athletics or mathematics, but even as a boy I possessed unnatural patience. I would wait with my mother while she got her hair styled. I would sit in a chair and wait for hours. No magazine, no toys, not even swinging my legs back and forth. All the mothers were very impressed." Both Frenchmen fidget. Beyond the door of the office, what ears listen. "Please sit if you'd like," Von Rumpel says to Hublin, and pats the chair next to him. But Hublin does not sit. Time passes. Von Rumpel swallows the last of his tea and sets the cup very carefully on the edge of the assistant director's desk. Somewhere, an electric fan whirs to life, runs a while, and shuts down. Hublin says, "It's not clear what we're waiting for, Sergeant Major. I'm waiting for you to be truthful. If I might. Stay, says Von Rumpel. Sit. I'm sure if one of you were to call out instructions, the mademoiselle who looks like a giraffe will hear. Will she not? The assistant director crosses and recrosses his legs. By now it's past noon. Perhaps you would like to see the skeleton. The skeletons, tries the assistant director. The Hall of Man is quite spectacular, and our zoological collection is beyond. I would like to see the minerals you do not reveal to the public, one in particular. Hublin's throat splotches pink and white. He does not take a seat. The assistant director seems resigned to an impasse and pulls a thick, perfect-bound stack of paper from a drawer and begins to read. Hublin shifts as if to leave, but Von Rumpel merely says, "Please stay until we have resolved this." Waiting, thinks Von Rumpel, is a kind of war. You simply tell yourself that you must not lose. The assistant director's telephone rings and he reaches to pick it up, but Von Rumpel holds up his hand and the phone rings 10 or 11 times and then falls quiet. What might be a full half hour passes. Hublin staring at his shoelaces, the assistant director making occasional notes in his manuscript with a silver pen, Von Rumpel remaining completely motionless, and then there is a distant tapping on the door. "Gentlemen," comes the voice. Von Rumpel calls, "We are fine, thank you." The assistant director says, "I have other matters to attend to, Sergeant Major." Von Rumpel does not raise his voice. "You will wait here, both of you. You will wait here with me until I see what I have come to see, and then we will all go back to our important jobs." The mineralogist's chin trembles. The fan starts again, then dies. A 5-minute timer, guesses Von Rumpel. He waits for it to start and die one more time. Then he lifts his basket to his lap. He points to the chair. His voice is gentle. "Sit, Professor. You will be more comfortable." Hublin does not sit. 2 o'clock out in the city, and bells toll in 100 churches. Walkers down on the paths. The last of autumn's leaves spiraling to earth. Von Rumpel unrolls the napkin across his lap, lifts out the cheese. He breaks the bread slowly, sending a rich cascade of crust into his napkin. As he chews, he can almost hear their guts rumbling. He offers them nothing. When he finishes, he wipes the corners of his mouth. "You read me wrong, monsieur. I'm not an animal. I'm not here to raise your collections. They belong to all of Europe, to all of humanity, do they not? I am here only for something small, something smaller than the bone of your kneecaps." He looks at the mineralogist as he says it, who looks away, crimson. The assistant director says, "This is absurd, Sergeant Major." Von Rumpel folds his napkin and places it back in the basket and sets the basket on the ground. He licks the tip of his finger and picks the crumbs off his tunic one by one. Then he looks directly at the assistant director. "The Lycée Charlemagne, is that right? On the Rue Charlemagne?" The skin around the assistant director's eyes stretches. "Where your daughter goes to school?" Von Rumpel turns in his chair. "And the College Stanislas, isn't it, Dr. Hublin, where your twin sons attend, on the Rue Notre-Dame-des-Champs? Wouldn't those handsome boys be preparing to walk home right now?" Hublin sets his hands on the back of the empty chair beside him, and his knuckles become very white. "One with a violin and the other a viola. Am I correct? Crossing all those busy streets. That's a long walk for 10-year-old boys." The assistant director is sitting very upright. Von Rumpel says, "I know it is not here, monsieur. Not even the lowest janitor would be so stupid as to leave the diamond here, but I would like to see where you have kept it. I would like to know what sort of place you believe is safe enough." Neither of the Frenchmen says anything. The assistant director resumes looking at his manuscript, though it is clear to Von Rumpel that he's no longer reading. At 4 o'clock, the secretary raps on the door, and again Von Rumpel sends her away. He practices concentrating only on blinking. Pulse in his neck. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Others, he thinks, would do this with less finesse. Others would use scanners, explosives, pistol barrels, muscle. Von Rumpel uses the cheapest of material. Only minutes, only hours. 5 bells. The light leaches out of the gardens. "Sergeant Major, please," says the assistant director, his hands flat on his desk, looking up now. "It is very late. I must relieve myself." "Feel free," Von Rumpel gestures with one hand at a metal trash can beside the desk. The mineralogist wrinkles his face. Again the phone rings. Hublin chews his cuticles. Pain shows in the assistant director's face. The fan whirs. Out in the gardens, the daylight unwinds from the trees, and still Von Rumpel waits. "Your colleague," he says to the mineralogist, "he's a logical man, isn't he? He doubts the legends, but you seem more fiery. You don't want to believe. You tell yourself not to believe, but you do believe." He shakes his head. "You've held the diamond. You've felt its power." "This is ridiculous," says Hublin. His eyes roll like a frightened colt's. "This is not civilized behavior. Are our children safe, Sergeant Major? I demand that you let us determine if our children are safe." "A man of science, and yet you believe the myths. You believe in the might of reason, but you also believe in fairy tales, goddesses, and curses." The assistant director inhales sharply. "Enough," he says. "Enough." Von Rumpel's pulse soars. Has it already happened so easily? He could wait 2 more days, 3, while ranks of men broke against him like waves. "Are our children safe, Sergeant Major? If you wish them to be. May I use the telephone?" Von Rumpel nods. The assistant director reaches for the handset, says "Sylvie" into it, listens a while, then sets it down. The woman enters with a ring of keys. From a drawer inside the assistant director's desk, she produces another key on a chain. Simple, elegant, long-shafted. A small locked door at the back of the main floor gallery. It takes 2 keys to open it, and the assistant director seems inexperienced with the lock. They lead Von Rumpel down a corkscrewing stone staircase. At the bottom, the assistant director unlocks a second gate. They wind through warrens of hallways, past a warder who drops his newspaper and sits ramrod straight as they pass. In an unassuming storeroom filled with drop cloths and pallets and crates, behind a sheet of plywood, the mineralogist reveals a simple combination safe that the assistant director opens rather easily. No alarms, only the one guard. Inside the safe is a second, far more interesting box. It is heavy enough that it requires both the assistant director and the mineralogist to lift it out. Elegant. Its joinery invisible, no brand name, no combination dial. It is presumably hollow, but with no discernible hinges, no nails, no attachment points. It looks like a solid block of highly polished wood. Custom work. The mineralogist fits a key into a tiny, almost invisible hole on the bottom. When it turns, 2 more keyholes open on the opposite side. The assistant director inserts matching keys into those holes. They unlock what looks like 5 different shafts. 3 overlapping cylinder locks, each dependent on the next. "Ingenious," whispers Von Rumpel. The entire box falls gently open. Inside sits a small felt bag. He says, "Open it." The mineralogist looks at the assistant director. The assistant director picks up the bag and unties its throat and upends a wrapped bundle into his palm. With a single finger, he nudges apart the folds inside, and there lies a blue stone as big as a pigeon's egg. With a single finger, he nudges apart the folds. Inside lies a blue stone as big as a pigeon's egg.